I'm Margaret Carney, and I'm Director and Curator of the International Museum of Dinnerware Design. And I thank you. I know you have lots of different things you could do with your time, and we appreciate you being here this evening. I want to say a couple of things before we launch into this exciting talk about Heath Ceramics and the legacy of Edith Heath. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you that your memberships keep us afloat. So you get this newsletter in the mail if you join as a member, and you get exciting show announcements. We have in-person shows. This one right now, the travel dining is in Ann Arbor. So if you're coming to the area, you can come see it, or you can go to our website at dinnerwaremuseum.org and you can see the online catalog for it. So don't miss that. And we have lots of other exhibitions coming up. And before we start this evening, I want to thank the Ann Arbor District Library for hosting this event. It's a lot of fun working with them, and we look forward to into 2023 doing this some more. I want to mention a month from now, we will have Peter Sanger here talking about Sanger porcelain, and you won't want to miss that. We have a piece of his that's in the travel dining show, so you should go look at that at our website, and then attend on the 14th of December at the same time, Peter Sanger. And we have, in case you're wondering, we've decided to launch right ahead in January. So January through May, we will have speakers each month. We've already invited people to do that, and that will be up on our website very soon in partnership with the Ann Arbor District Library. So I don't think I have any other announcements to make. Oh, yes, I do. Of course I do. Okay. So a month ago, Christopher McPherson unfortunately couldn't give his talk about melamine, and so I gave one. And the result of that was excellent, because it wasn't that my talk was so great, but that people sent in, get this right side up, this is regatta. So people sent in, I mean, they inquired first whether we had something or we wanted something, and then we had all kinds of wonderful plastic dishes, melamine, that Russell Wright designed, that Raymond Loewy designed, and everyone else. So all the blanks, pretty much, we didn't have any lucent, we didn't have any Melodor, and we didn't have this and that. Most of those blanks have been filled in and are being cataloged right now. So thank you all very much for supporting that. And I want to show you a couple things of Heath pottery before we get started, just to tell you how much I personally am looking forward to this talk by Julie. We have a number of pieces, including this wonderful teapot that was donated from Bill Stern's collection in Los Angeles, which she may or may not be able to tell us some dates on things. We have a number of all different sizes of casseroles. This is the mother of all casseroles, probably from the 1960s, that Linda Arbuckle, the artist Linda Arbuckle, donated, including wonderful cups and saucers and plates in a pumpkin color. And I think Julie might tell us a little bit about that. And the piece de resistance, for people who know me as a dinnerware collector, that we always had ashtrays on my family's table. So I purchased this one in Ann Arbor, and it's a wonderful Heath and kind of a mustard color, and it's big too, so it's a multiple people using it kind of ashtray. So I'd like to now talk to you about what we're going to be discussing tonight, which is a place at the table, Heath Ceramics and the legacy of Edith Heath. And I'm not going to describe her talk because she's going to give it in a minute, but Julie Muñiz is the archivist and curator of the Heath Historical Collection, which documents the life and the work of Edith Heath and Heath Ceramics. She received her Master's of Art from the Bard Graduate Center in New York City, and her extensive background in material, cultural, and design history, coupled with a refined curatorial eye, have made her a recognized thought leader in the design industry field. She's worked in the curatorial departments at the Oakland Museum of California, the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, and the Connecticut Historical Society Museum. Her expertise has been featured by media outlets, including the New York Times, Forbes, and the List TV. So without further ado, I want to welcome Julie, and thank you so much for this presentation this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. I am just going to dive right in and hopefully share the screen. So you should be able to see this. If not, please let me know. But let's just go ahead and get started, shall we? So thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. And I wanted to share a little bit about Heath Ceramics, the history of the company, and of course, the amazing woman that started it. I have been the curator and archivist for Heath Ceramics and the Heath Ceramics Foundation since late 2015. And when I came here, the collection that they had was kind of just boxed up in lots and lots of paper, semi-organized, but they really didn't have a way to access it easily. And so that's what they asked me and for my help. It took a while, but I am so proud to say that we now have this wonderful database that all the pieces are cataloged and photographed, and it's just a great collection. There's over 3,000 objects in the collection. I don't have an exact number just because there are some of the records that have more than one piece in them. But there are lots of pieces that document both Edith's early career, some of her early life, and also up to today. The company still actively collects and tries to preserve its history and documents the products that it's making. So I'm proud to say actually that we are able, this database is actually mostly available for Heath staff and limited use for researchers, but we do have a new gallery that's actually accessible to the public. And I'm going to maybe at the end of the presentation, since it's not, I can't see this on my screen just yet, but I'm going to share a link to that database. There's about 100 objects that you can search for and look at and see the records on. We hope that we will be able to add some more to this in the future. But let's go ahead and start to talk a little bit about who was Edith Heath. And she was many things. This was a woman that really defies classification. She was, of course, a wife. She was an artist from a young age, but she was also a businesswoman and an entrepreneur. And I think that one of the things that has always impressed me about Edith Heath is how she kind of came from this very humble background and yet had a very astute sense of business and was able to kind of capture and understand what the consumer, the American housewife would want and need, and then be able to produce that. She did not start taking ceramics until 1942. She was 31 years old at that time. She, of course, had taken many art classes and had been studying art previously. But 1942 is when she took her very first ceramics class, and she started wheel throwing, and she just kind of became enamored with it. This is also, I should say, the same year that she and Brian moved to the Bay Area. So 1942 was really kind of a turning point, a start of a new life for her. Once she was bitten by the ceramic bug, she just was all gung-ho. And I love this wonderful sketch that she did. It shows Brian sitting at his desk. He was actually a worker with the American Red Cross, but she is toiling away at her hot kiln while he's sitting at his desk thinking about going overseas. It's just a wonderful picture and kind of shows a bit of her personality, I think. She was not only interested in the artistic element of ceramics and what she could make, but she was really also interested in the chemistry of it, the chemical reaction, what's happening with the materials, the minerals within the clay body, within the glazes, and how they interact. So in 1943, she petitioned the University of California Extension for a ceramic chemistry, clay chemistry class. And she won, she got it. And so since then, she started studying chemistry of ceramic. She was also really fascinated by California's natural landscape. Now, as I just said, she had just moved to the Bay Area. So she and Brian, her husband, spent many weekends just driving around and exploring the wonderful landscape of California. But they didn't always go the typical tourist route. A lot of places that they went were studying old clay mines and clay pits. California is very well known for its clay bodies, and they would go and examine some of these old clay pits. This is a great picture. Some of these pictures I should mention are from the paper archives, which are housed at the Environmental Design Archive in Berkeley. So this picture is from there. And you see Edith in one of those old clay mines. This is later. She is with a class at this point, showing people the old clay mines. And she would actually go and dig her own clay in these mines and then take it back and kind of play with it, experiment with it. So you see in the lower right, some of her various clay experiments that she went with. In 1944, she got her big break. Now, remember, this is just 2 years after she started ceramics. So she took her first pottery class. So it's really quite extraordinary that she gets a solo show at the California Legion of Honor. It's a very prestigious museum here in San Francisco, and she is honored with a solo exhibition of her work. It was only a month's time, but it really kind of was the pivot point of her career. Now, we have lists of the pieces that were in the show, but unfortunately, there are no photographs. So we don't know exactly what was shown, but we have a pretty good idea. And this is just some examples of pieces probably very similar to what was actually in that Legion of Honor show. These are all signed and dated 1943 and 1944, so the same time period. And they're also, you can see the different clay bodies that she's working with here, that rough red clay, and especially in this cigarette box here and in this bowl. She was actually digging up clays from brick mines, from brick builders, and using those. She was really interested in that. Now, as I said, in 1944, that year was really pivotal, and that Legion of Honor show really started her career. It was here she got the attention of Gump's department store. Now, Gump's is a major retailer in the San Francisco Bay Area, very well known, very popular. And this was during the war too. And I think we can all relate to this going through COVID and the supply chain issues that we've been having. In the war time, they had similar sorts of issues. So Gump's was having a hard time actually getting some of their dinnerware, some of their objects that they would normally sell in their department store. They were having a hard time actually getting them. So they started turning to a lot of craftspeople to make objects. And Edith Heath was one of those people. It was with their help that she was able to open a small studio. They paid her $50 a month, and she would hand throw the dinnerware that would be sold in the store. And she had a couple of assistants, some of her students, that would help her with it. But it was mostly her just at the wheel throwing. This is one of the plates from that time period. And as I said, she had a couple of assistants. And one of the things I find really interesting is that she had everybody sign the plate Heath. So if you see the plate and it's signed Heath, it doesn't mean that it was thrown by Edith. It's just that the Heath was thrown in her studio. And I think this is very astute of her. I mean, she actually kind of thought of herself already as creating a brand and creating a product that was under her name. And so instead of individual craftspeople, individual artists that were creating work, it was all part of her name and her product. She was the one that was designing it. She was the one that was figuring out the glazes. She was the one that was really had her name on these plates. And she had her name on them in other ways too. If you see the blue plate on the left, this plate shows what she was interested in at that time. And as I said, she was really interested in the chemistry of ceramic. So the thing that made these pieces really unique was that they weren't glazed in typical fashion. She actually mixed colorant into the clay body when she was working with it. so that the blue color that you see in this plate is actually coming from the cobalt that she mixed into the clay body. And you can see those blue speckles that are all over the surface. That is the cobalt coming to the surface. So it's really interesting, and we're going to see this time and time again in her work, that she is very much reminding us that these plates are made of clay, they are made of earth, and she is reminding us of the materiality of these objects. So also during this time, Edith is sort of developing her own style. And one of the styles she's experimenting with is these kind of curved and curvaceous forms. And this is something that she really seemed to really like. You see in the sketch here, this wonderful coffee pot that she did. And this is a brochure from Wilkes-Wilshire, excuse me, that was advertising her wear. And you can see also there's a little bit of shadow here that kind of suggests that she had a little bit of a waist. Some of these pieces do, they're slightly figure eight-like. And if they weren't that, they had this large bulbous bottom. This is a coffee pot, but you can see that it's kind of very oblong, very pear-shaped. And she liked these shapes quite a bit. And if you think about Heath today, it's not like this at all. And this is really a product of how her style changed over the years. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is, again, these rich earth colors. Again, she's really linking this to the earth, and that this talks about how the color is coming from the clay itself. The other thing I'd like to show you is these colors that it lists: this soft granite blue, this misty green, and this warm beige that she's creating. They're very, very warm, very soft earth tones that she's using, again, linking it to the earth. Now, she was, this was a couple of years doing this work with Dumps and a couple other retailers that she had. But soon she attracted the attention of a national distributor. N.S. Gustin had offered her a great opportunity. They would take her dinnerware and distribute it all across the United States. And she understood this was an amazing opportunity, but she also understood that she could not possibly do this in her small studio throwing ceramics. And even if she had a team of craftspeople, they wouldn't be able to really provide the kind of demand that Gustin would want. So they went into factory production. That's when they made this decision. Here's a great picture. This is also at the EDA of their very first factory in the Bridgeway building in Sausalito, California. They released their first line of dinnerware from the factory in 1947. And they had to make a lot of changes. When you throw a plate, it's a much different process than when you actually are creating a plate on a jigger or creating an object in a cast, in a mold. So they had to kind of rethink these things. The other thing they had to think about was the glazing, because clearly they would want to have different colors, but she could no longer just rely on creating different colored clay bodies. She would have to have a single clay body that could then be used for multiple products. So she had to switch to actually glazing her pieces. Here we see a brochure from that very first line. The first production pieces, she released a 6-piece place setting. You can see that here. She had 2 serving bowls, one with a lid, one without. She had a platter, and she had salt and pepper shaker and a cream and sugar. And it's in those 2 objects, the cream and sugar and the salt and pepper shaker. You can see that she's still holding on to that curvaceous shape. So we're going to look at that. This is a great comparison. I love these objects. They're probably some of my favorite in the collection. This is a hand-thrown sugar bowl on the left. This is actually part of the same set that coffee pot was that we saw earlier. And on the right, you see a slip cast sugar bowl, and that is made from a mold taken from this hand-thrown object. So you can really see that she's trying to maintain this style that she loves. And she even goes as far as creating an inward curve of the lip, just trying to get it as very much in line with her studio production as she could. The other really interesting thing, and unfortunately, you can't really see this very well in the picture, but when you hold these objects and when you look at the mold, because we do have the model of this object in the collection, you can see that she's even gone so far as to recreate the throwing lines on the pieces. So you can see them actually in the cast object itself, very faintly, not as much as you would see on the hand thrown object, but they're there. And you can really feel that she's trying to show, even though these pieces are not thrown by hand anymore, they are still coming from a studio background. Unfortunately, even though she was trying really hard to create that, she realized very quickly that it just wasn't going to work for factory production. So by 1949, they had changed the shape of the sugar bowl, and you see that on the right. This is the same sugar bowl that's still in production today. And she had to do this with a lot of pieces in the collection, that she just wasn't able to maintain that curved style, that even though she was creating something in a mold, there was still a lot of hand finishing going on. That curved inward lip, that wonderful S shape and curvature that held in the hand so nicely, just wasn't coming out. They weren't coming out easily from the mold, and she had to change. The other way she was aligning this work with her studio was in the glazes she chose. These are the glazes. They all came out in 1947. The original 4 glazes are these 4 on the left, and then the other 2 came out by the end of 46. But you see again, here she has that soft granite blue, that misty green, that wonderful soft beige that she had in her studio line. And again, they're very earth tone. By end of 47, she added this aqua and this apricot. But again, she's also really trying to maintain a link as much as she can to her studio production. We're going to look at another comparison here. On the left, you see a hand-thrown plate from her studio years, and on the right, a plate from early production. So you can see, obviously, design-wise, very similar. You know, you might think that there's not a lot you can do with a dinner plate, but there is. But these are very similar in design. So she wanted them to be the same size, have the same kind of unflared and unridged the lip, and very simple and unadorned. So the only really decoration that you're getting from this is from the speckle, from the glaze, and from the clay. So in the left, you see that it is this wonderful brown speckle all over it. And that is coming from the manganese in the clay body. That manganese kind of comes up to the surface as it fires, and it creates this great speckle. Edith loved this speckle. This speckle spoke to the materiality that this object was made from. And the speckle was really important to her. So even though when she starts production work, she has to glaze these pieces in a more opaque glaze, she still is able to maintain that wonderful manganese speckle. Doesn't come through quite as much, but it's still very evident in the pieces. And a lot of times, Heath is really known for that speckle now. You can still see it in a lot of the glazes that we have. I am going to move quickly now to some of those early glazes, other early glazes that she did, and some of the innovation that she worked with. So by the end of 1949, she added these spray patterns, and they were using spray guns with glazing with a spray gun, which is not new. She did not invent that. But she did use that spray gun to kind of add a color to the lip or the backs of her plates. So this plate this wonderful salad bowl is glazed, fully glazed in the sand glaze, and then it has the spray mountain blue on the lip. And what that does is it gives you this beautiful gradient that comes up as that spray gets heavier towards the lip. The other thing that this does is that these two glazes actually interact. So here we have the sea and sand pattern, which is very well known. And it's glazed entirely in the sand glaze. And then it's the second glaze. It's actually a mix. It's just called sea and sand mix. Not very exciting. But that secondary glaze is sprayed over. That's what you're getting with the darker color here. But then where you see this really beautiful flash of green, that is where the glazes are interacting. That's where you're actually seeing the lighter spray of glaze and the copper in that glaze kind of flashing through as it interacts with the beige. In 1955, she released her two-tone pattern. And this coincided with the release of a buffet line that she did. She realized that women were entertaining and needed large pieces, party pieces. So she released this beautiful, wonderful, very large party bowl and a platter. But the other thing about these two-tone glazes is the way that she did these. So, and this actually, I will say that the beautiful turquoise bowl and spoon here, this does not apply to. But with the cups here, the platter, and the ladle, these are all one single glaze. So she's actually getting two different colors from a single glaze, and that was very unique. The way she did this was by lining the pieces, lining the interior of the cup or the face of the platter with a porcelain slip, a white clay body that would then block that manganese from coming through. So what you're getting is the sand beige on the outside of this cup, sand beige on the inside, but some of those minerals are not coming to the surface. They're blocked by the white clay body. So you get this bright white color. The same is going on with this pumpkin glaze, one glaze color, but the porcelain liner allows that color to become this beautiful deep orange. And the same can be said with the ladle. This is apricot, but when you use the porcelain liner, the pattern is known as golden apricot. So I'm going to fast forward now just to talk about Heath today. I think it's really important because Heath is continuing to evolve and grow. Edith was 92 years old when she sold Heath Ceramic, and she realized that she was getting up there in years and she needed to figure out what was going to be her legacy. Brian had already passed at this time, and she was looking for a buyer for the company that would continue in the same kind of philosophy that she had. And she found that with a young couple, Catherine Bailey and Robin Petrovic, who purchased Heath Ceramics in 2003. They have since done a lot of things to help kind of bring it into a modern era. The first thing they did was they brought all of the distribution in-house. And so that it was really more direct to consumer instead of selling wholesale to a lot of different distributors. But the other thing that they did was realize that they were missing still a studio component to it, that element that Edith brought that they did not have anymore. So in 2008, they hired Adam Silverman as their creative director. And he is a very well-known, very talented ceramist. And he was able to help them create different products and think about Heath and add that studio component and experimentation that they were missing. In 2011, Adam handed the reins over to Tung Chang, and he is still our wonderful creative director. Tung has taken a different approach. Tung has always been very interested in kind of continuing Edith's work. So instead of going and working on his own pieces, on his own kind of artistic vision, he is really trying to channel Edith. And he just done that in a couple of ways. The first is in 2011, he opened the Clay Studio. The Clay Studio is it's an outgrowth of the Adam Silverman studio. But here, under Tung's direction, it's really focusing on, again, just sort of the work that Edith did. Edith loved to experiment. We have lots of examples of her lathe experiments, her production experiments, everything in the collection. And they needed that. They were missing that in Heath. And so the Clay Studio is a place where they can kind of have fun. They do both hand-thrown individual pieces. They do limited production. They also do a lot of experimenting with glazes and specialized glaze techniques. So this really embodies what Edith was looking for in terms of her desire to really understand that material. The second thing that Tung did was start the design series. That started in 2013. And the design series, we do one every year, and it looks at a specific form or concept in great detail. So as an example, you see in the slide here, this year's design series, which was titled Forms of Care. These were all planters, and every one of them are individually thrown, individually unique. So each piece is a one-off. All of these, the design series always sells out. I think this series sold out in a couple of hours, really quickly, because these pieces are so unique. But it's really a way of, the thing that he was thinking about was having us, as we've coming out of the pandemic, and how we're caring for a living being, that idea of kind of looking at the well-being of something else other than us. Another example that I also really love is from 2020 is the design series 8, which he titled Listen. And these are wonderful. These are little tiny vessels. Within each are some little tiny ceramic or metal beads, so that when you pick them up, they make this lovely sound. He calls them sound vessels. And again, it's just another way of us kind of turning inward and thinking and allowing us to contemplate everything that we've been going through the last couple of years. Heath continues to evolve. And one of the ways it has been evolving is through partnership. In 2008, Heath was approached by famed restaurateur Alice Waters. She owns the restaurant Chez Panisse in Berkeley. It's internationally known. And she was looking for a new set of dinnerware to use in her restaurant. So she came to Heath, and they worked very closely together to create the dinnerware that you see here. And you can also purchase this in the showroom. But if you go to Chez Panisse, if you're so lucky to get a reservation and eat there, this is the dinnerware that you would eat off of. And one of the things when Heath partners with somebody is they usually choose people that are collaborators that are very similar in their mindset. So Alice Waters is very much about localized ingredients. And Heath is similar in that sense, in that we're using local clay from California. We really want to think about where our materials come from. Another collaboration is with Natalie Channon, whose company Alabama Channon makes these really lovely kind of slow design pieces of fashion. So in 2010, we started the Alabama Channon collection. You can see this here, examples of it. These are all on our coupe line. So the plates themselves are not redesigned. But what's unique about them is that each and of all of these little tiny marks that you see them, they're all hand etched without a template. So somebody takes the time, one of our wonderful craft people takes the time to very slowly create the patterns on these plates. And not only does it look like stitching, which, Alabama Channing is known for that kind of hand stitched and traditional feel. So not only is it reminiscent of that, but I think it's also really reminiscent of the slow design that both Heath and Alabama Channing share. In 2014, we started a partnership with House Industries, a type foundry in Delaware. They created these wonderful clocks that we still have today and are very popular. And then in 2019, and actually also again this year, we've partnered with the Finnish design house Artek. If you're not familiar with them, they were started in 1935 by Alvar Aalto and his wife Ino. Very tongue-twisting name. But they are known for their wonderful, very modernist, early modernist pieces, and especially things like the Stool 60, which you see here, which has this kind of curved beechwood bentwood leg. So for our version of Stool 60, Heath really looked at some new ways of glazing, and they are always coming up with new kind of glazing techniques. So they developed this pattern that you see on the platter here, and it's called Universe. So what it is first the piece is glazed in this beautiful midnight glaze, and then the various colors of the glazes are added through small little speckles of white and red and blue and green, so that you get this beautiful kind of homage to the wonders of space in them. Artec was able to take that pattern and then recreate it via silk screen so that you get the same idea on these beautiful Stool 60s. We just recently partnered with Artec again this year and have just released a set of tables that are topped with Heath tile. So these are also, again, very lovely and very much the tradition of both Artec and Heath. I'm going to finish up there so we have time for questions, but I want to just say that Heath continues to innovate, and we hope that if you'll come to Sausalito, we'd love to have you walk through our factory and see what we have. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. And I think we do have questions in the chat, Bill.
Yes, some questions are beginning to come in, and you can.
Yeah, I'm going to
through the chat, or you can raise your hand.
And while people ask questions, I'm going to cut and paste the link to the gallery. I was going to do that during my presentation, but as I said, I lost my menu, so I couldn't get into the chat. So I just posted a link to our public gallery if you want to see the pieces that are in the historical collection. There's about 100 objects that are available right now for public viewing, and you can see some of the research that we've been able to do.
Great. I can't wait to look at that. So, and I apologize for not telling people they should put their questions in the chat beforehand. I forgot.
So we have a question. Where are the studio designs available?
The studio designs. Which ones? Oh, the early pieces? I'm not sure. Robert, can you clarify? Robert, can you unmute and clarify what exactly you're interested in?
I'm assuming his question had to do with where you showed some designs in recent years by your designers, and then you said they sold out within hours.
Yeah. Okay. Those pieces, like I said, okay, so that's the design series, and that happens once a year. If you go onto the Heath website and sign up for their newsletter, you'll get the announcement when they do the next one. And this year, everything was sold online. In the past, they've sold them in the showrooms, but this year, everything was sold online, and it was, like I said, they started it and it was gone very quickly. So, but yeah, if you don't live in the Bay Area, I think they're going to continue to do it online so other people who are outside the area have access as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So another question. Do you know anything about the interactions between Russell Wright and Edith Heath?
Oh. I laugh because I assume that the person who asked this knows a little bit about the letters that went back and forth. There are some letters that I think there's one that's in the Archives of American Art that go back between Russell Wright. Russell Wright had accused Edith of basically stealing his design, and he has his American Modernist plate that he did, and he said that Edith's poop line was too similar to them, And she sent him this long letter back explaining why it's totally different in the sense that, and it's like I had talked about, hers are expressing interest in, hand craftsmanship, interest in the materials and the places that it was made, whereas she calls Russell Wright pieces just industrially mass produced and had no feeling and no soul. So there was a little bit of tension between them, but Edith kind of came out on top on that one.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Another question. I've bought Heath pieces new and used for about 30 years.
Mhm.
Is there a guide to shapes and glazes that might help me date pieces and also the marks?
Well, thank you very much, because it allows me to put in a plug for our new book. So one of the things that we have been able to do since the collection, part of the collection went, like paper archives and photographs all went to the EDA, the Environmental Design Archives at Berkeley. And then a lot of the physical objects stayed with the historical collection at Heath Ceramics. And between those, we have been able to do a lot of in-depth research. And all of that kind of came to a head when we released this new book about Edith Heath called Edith Heath Philosophies. And put it so that it doesn't get blurred out of my screen there. And in this book, there's several essays by several very noted historians and scholars. I wrote an essay on this, but I also provided some of the research that we did, that I did on product development and glaze history on that. And sorry, might be able to see, but you can look in this and then find out more information. You can purchase this book on Amazon. You can also purchase it through the EDA library. So it's available for that, but it does. And I should also put the footnote that, at the time of publishing, we were still finding out information. So there was a kind of time period where we had to say stop and actually put it down on paper. So some of it may not be as accurate since we have discovered new information, but we try to provide dates of production when pieces and glazes came into production and possibly came out.
Could you repeat the name of the book?
Yes.
On the screen, it was a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah, it's fuzzy because I have my background blurred. It's called Edith Heath Philosophies. Here, I will. Yeah, I will.
Philosophies.
Yes, I will type it into the chat.
Okay, great.
Does that show a history of back stamps and how people might be able to differentiate early from middle to later pieces?
Yeah, it does. We do have, and I do provide a little bit of a background. Sorry, I have my screen blurred and my background blurred because my office is such a mess. But there is some background on some of the earlier stamps. The problem with dating with the stamps is that, well, a couple of problems. There was no real consistency in it. The people that made the models and the molds kind of did whatever they wanted. So there's no consistent stamp. You can't say this stamp started this date, this stamp started this date. We've been able to kind of triangulate certain dates, and we've been able to kind of triangulate certain pieces and give date ranges based on when we think the things like the registration mark was added to the case, or when that dropped bowl was added to the case. And then I say the case, I mean the masterpiece which the mold was made from. So when it was added to that, and then subsequent molds were made from that, then we know, okay, this is when this started. But it's really very kind of hit and miss. And that's why I said it's really hard to date that teapot, especially without me looking at it. There's a lot of also very subtle things that you can see within the clay body itself, and also sometimes within the glaze. Some glazes have subtle differences over the years, but it's really hard to tell with pictures or on video. So I apologize for that. But you can see that research in this book.
Okay. Another question. Curious about the ceramics and if they're safe to heat and use in the dishwasher.
Yes,
And also,
absolutely.
are the glazes safe and been tested for consumption?
Yes. So I think starting in like the 80s, starting in the 70s, Edith was really pushing to take lead out of the glazes. They did have some lead in some of the earlier glazes, and she was really insistent that that the raw lead come out of the glazes on the dinnerware. Since 2003, there is no lead at all in the glazes. Some of the earlier ones might have some. They have leaded frit, which is considered safe because it doesn't leach the lead, but I would still recommend you test it. You can buy little tiny lead test things, they're little swabs. You can get them on Amazon. They're pretty cheap.
And
But
dishwasher and oven safe?
yes, absolutely. That was something that Edith was very insistent on because she wanted this dinnerware to be something, she said, as good enough for everyday use as well as for Sunday best. So it had to be able to be put in a dishwasher and go oven to table and just kind of get used. She wanted it used. She didn't want it like sitting in a cabinet. That fine china that only got brought out once a year. She didn't want that.
Another question, does Heath continue to source different clays for various shapes, or is the production based on one clay, giving uniform color?
There is one clay body that we use, and Heath has used one single clay body since they started production. Let me take that back. One brown clay body, and for a while we were using a white clay body as well. That white clay body started in '84. We just stopped using it because there has been an issue with talc. But it's just those clay bodies. Those two clay bodies are used for all of the dinnerware because, as I said, she could not rely on having different clay bodies for different products. She had to be able to produce, let's say you're making 100 plates and you want them, 5 of them might be blue and 10 of them might be green, but they all have to be the same clay body because I can't mix different clays as easily when I'm doing mass production like that.
So Julie, you mentioned when you were showing early, I can't remember what form it was. Maybe it was a sugar. You mentioned
yeah.
you had the model for it. So you have the original plaster models for
Yes.
a lot of the work, and
not a lot of it. We do have some of it. And actually it was kind of that the fact that we have that model is really, it's unique. And for a long time, we actually didn't know what it was. It kind of was like a final, light bulb moment when we made the connection, because the model is actually larger because of shrinkage. When the clay gets, cooked, it shrinks. And so the model is like big. It doesn't look, it's got a, top on it and everything. It doesn't look exactly the same, and it's solid. So we didn't know what it was for. And then finally, we had that kind of aha moment when we looked at them all together. So the fact that we have that is very unique. We do have some early molds and models, but it's very hit and miss.
Another question, does Heath still produce those salt and pepper shakers with the corks on the top?
Yes, we do. Those are still available. They are, that shape is the same shape as our bud vases, but you can also purchase them as salt and pepper shaker. They have a cork and they have little holes on the neck, or on the shoulder, I should say.
And there's maybe a more technical question. How high is the firing temperature? And is it considered stoneware or earthenware, or?
I could not answer the temperature, the firing temperature, but it is stoneware. And I will say that I didn't go into a lot of the chemistry of it because it gets pretty technical. And I'll be honest, I am not as good at this as some other people. But Edith was really interested in creating a stoneware body that could be cooked at a lower temperature. So she worked with eutectics, which is basically this kind of chemistry where you're taking two materials that fire at a high temperature, but when you combine them, they fire at a low temperature. So it is stoneware. It's very, I don't know what the specific porosity of it is, but it's, pretty non-porous. As typical like stoneware is, but it fires at a lower temperature than most stoneware does.
And we have one more, which is not so much of a question as a comment. Love those bud vases.
We all do. I have a kind of little fetish for them. People collect them. They come in wonderful glazes and lots of different experimental glazes on them. They're beautiful.
So, well, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, Julie, so much for this talk. I've learned so much, and now I have more questions are formulating in my mind. I'm going to email you. Thank you very much, and
Of course.
we'll see everybody in a month for Peter Sanger's talk on Sanger porcelain.